tell us about the myth of the given. It's brought up at the beginning of Sellers' Empiricism, the Philosophy of the Mind, which is a pretty standard book on this, as well as the Bonjour text, which...
Empiricism, the Philosophy of Mind, by Willard Sellers. I almost said Wilfred. Wilfred. Wasn't that a movie with the guy with the rats?
Willard?
What was that?
Yeah.
Willard, the creeper with all the rats.
Right.
Chew 'em up, boys. Chew 'em up.
Wilfred Brimley. Diabetes.
Okay. So, anyway, Sellers talks about the myth of given. So he's really referring to what in epistemology became sense datum theorists, which are classical foundationalists in the empiricist variety. And Sellers basically says, look, the whole point, that the reason why they come up with this kind of epistemological category of the given is really just to explicate the idea that all our empirical knowledge rests on a foundation of non-inferential knowledge of matter of fact. So what do I mean by non-inferential? So, well, let's start with inferential. To make an inference is to move from either one argument to the next or one concept to the next. But again, this is to return back to what Aristotle was talking about. If there's just an infinite regress of logical inference, there can be no knowledge. So what is posited? Well, kind of a basic, non-inferential, just a matter of fact. The buck has to stop somewhere. And it stops in what's called the given. It's just given. Can't question it anymore because it's just given. Otherwise, you're back on the infinite regress again. That's what, in short, I know it's more complicated than that, but in short, that's what the given is. And he says that's a myth.
Right.
And the problem is that you have this principle of like knows like. So, for example, the reason why I can, and this is between analogies, it's also between like contact, and anything that relates to another thing must have some type of principle of analogy between that like knows like. For example, if I wasn't physically constituted, guess what? I wouldn't be moving physical things.
Right. So how
I would go.
Yeah.
It would be like the movie, like you always see like Ghost or something. These Hollywood movies, right, where they try to reach for the glass or the cup and they just go through it. That kind of illustrates, because their substance is very different and not like the physical substances.
I was thinking of Patrick Swayze, because he sings.
Yeah, so was that.
He sings "She's Like the Wind," but when he's a ghost, he's like the wind. I don't know, that was dumb, but yes.
Yeah. Don't ever do that again, please.
I'm like the wind. Anyway.
So, okay, here's what sets up the problem. That's the myth of the given. Is that givens, epistemic givens, because they're non-inferential, they don't have logical content. They're fundamentally different than your concepts and logic, of which you're supposed to derive, and which all of your
through inference,
inferential knowledge rests on, as matter of facts, correct?
Yeah.
And the problem then is going to come up, well, how does what's essentially different relate to the other if there's no similarity? And there's a great quote from Donald Davidson in his coherence theory of truth and knowledge, where he states the relation between sensation and belief cannot be logical. So that's exactly what we just stated. Every classical foundationalist is going to admit that. Because it's not like, is there logic in the sensation? Are there concepts? Yeah. Of course it's not. They're just, especially when you get into the later empiricists, it's just like David Hume, it's just a sense manifold.
Right.
It's just like a bunch of particles and stuff like that. There's no concepts or forms or anything like that.
Yeah. So there's not actually informational content that's transferred to the mind. That's what I was trying to say, is that you're assuming to be able to reason about the world that there is informational content that matches up to the external. But if we just reduce our ideas or our concepts to brain states, how is a brain state like something in the external world. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's no way to relate the two. So already you have a problem of you have this gap.
This is just like the problem of absolute divine simplicity and relating created things to an absolutely simple essence that's absolutely unlike created things. And I think you have said that it's similar to the way that this is just transferring the same type of problem to the mental realm. And how does it relate to the realm of the external world?
Yeah, and it's the same problem. So you see reoccurring problems throughout the history of philosophy, whether it's dialectics or, which in some senses is actually kind of a dialectics. You see the same problem that rises, that Descartes creates, which we know now is been called the mind-body problem.
Exactly.
You define the mind in complete antithesis as far as properties to physical and bodily things, then you're going to immediately want to know, well, wait a minute, how do they interact? If they're nothing, they're just the opposite. So you have something like this too within the realm of epistemology. If basic sensation, brute facts, or what Sellers calls the given, is not logical, right? There's no concepts inherent within them. It's just sense datum. Then how does that relate? How do those sensations relate to beliefs and propositional attitudes and concepts and logical things within logical form?